Welcome to the Tell Us Ellis podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody. Good to be with you again, and excited to do another rewind sessions today. And really excited to do this movie in particular because it's one that I remember my dad watching it when I was younger. I have seen bits and pieces of it, but then sat down and watched it. And again, it's football themed because we're leading up towards the Super Bowl. We did Rudy last week, so this week we're doing another one. But yeah, it was a really interesting movie, and I took so much away from it. I mean, I have notes upon notes that I synthesized into kind of what I want to talk about today. So, but before we get into it, if you live anywhere from the Midwest to the South to the East Coast, there's a pretty big snowfall coming, and we all love snow. I love snow. It excites everybody. It gets the kids going. This could be a really dangerous storm just based on the length of it, the amount of snow it could produce. So just want to make sure everybody's safe. If it hasn't started snowing yet, go out, get your groceries, do all that stuff now. And then you can just sit back and you can watch my podcast. You can start with episode 1. And just go all the way through this one. So look, you've got stuff to do. So that's good. But no, seriously, enjoy it. You know, I was this close to being a meteorologist major, and that is honestly true. I had the paperwork when I was at Penn State. I was going to sign on the dotted line and change my major. And instead, I ended up in accounting. Go figure. But have had weather is just a passion of mine. I love following it and so forth. Not as much today as I used to, but still, this is going to be an interesting storm and maybe a record-breaking storm for Indiana. So very interesting. Before we get started, follow me on social media. That is one ask that I have. Follow me on X. Follow me on Instagram. It's at TellUsEllisHQ. And then subscribe to the show on YouTube. If you do that, you get automatic reminders as soon as the show comes out. It's going to be there for you. Click subscribe. And then, you know, if you like the episode, give it a thumbs up. Those things are all good. And again, trying to build the base of followers. And I've had so many great people reach out and say such great things. And I am very grateful for that. So anyway, YouTube, it's at Tell Us Ellis Media. And then if you want to be part of the show, just email me, jamie@tellusellis.com. Or if you have questions or just general comments or whatever you want to say, happy to hear from you. So on a winter's day, let's talk about our next movie in the rewind sessions. Okay, so today we are going to do a rewind sessions football special, and the movie is North Dallas 40. That's right, North Dallas 40. This goes back to 1979. And I said in the beginning, in the intro, it's a movie I remember my dad watching, and I had only seen pieces of it, but I remember seeing the very beginning part of the movie when Nick Nolte is laying in bed. He's got a bloody nose. He is hurt. He can barely walk. He does walk into the shower. He grabs his cigarette. It was either a cigarette or joint. At one point, I think it was a joint. He lays in the bathtub, and then he just thinks about the prior game. And he kind of chuckles at his successes he had in the game. And then he had a drop pass and kind of didn't like that as much. This movie is one that, you know, usually football movies will tell us what the game wants us to believe about itself. For example, movies about sports, movies about football, the movie tells us that football is noble. It tells us that football builds character. It tells us that pain is temporary, glory is forever, and any sacrifice you make is always worth it. Think about the movie Remember the Titans, for example, or even Rudy, which I did last week. You know, these all have that glory in it. And North Dallas 40 doesn't tell us any of that, not at all. It doesn't open up with a dream. It opens up with that hangover that I talked about, a guy in pain, taking that hot bath, feeling every ounce of pain. And that's important because this isn't a movie about chasing football. It's a movie about what happens after football has already taken you. Like I said, it was released in 1979. And this movie comes out at a strange moment in NFL history. The league is really starting to boom. Okay, this is the late 70s. the mythology of what football is hasn't really happened yet, but it is definitely on the rise. This is before free agency. This is before guaranteed contracts. This is before concussion protocols. It's before players had voices, platforms, or leverage. This is when football still pretended it was a family. It was, that family, family, family. This resonates throughout the movie. The talk about do it for the family, But while it talks about family, and while that was very true of the NFL in the late 70s, it operates almost like a factory. And this movie dares to say that part out loud. So at the center of it all is Phil Elliott. He is played by Nick Nolte, a wide receiver who can still play, still produce. He still matters, but his body is breaking down. His body is betraying him. He's hurt, he's aging, and worst of all, he knows it. So, North Dallas 40 isn't really asking the question of, can you make the team or can you win the glory? Can you win the championship? Can you be the hero? Again, some of those movies that I spoke about earlier, Remember the Titans, or even Rudy to an extent. On the basketball side, think Hoosiers. This movie isn't asking those questions. This movie is asking the question, what happens when the team is done with you? And that is a hard reality. And it's a question that hangs over every single frame of the movie. You can see it throughout. The only one who might not recognize it is Phil Elliott, Nick Nolte, but maybe he does. And maybe that's part of this story. So I want to talk about a little bit of context and why this movie could only really exist when it does. And again, we're talking the late 70s. This movie is based on the novel by Peter, and I might get his name wrong. It's either Peter Gent or Peter Gent. This guy was a 4-star athlete from Bangor High School in Michigan. He led the Bangor Vikings to the 1960 State C Championship in basketball. He was a 22.6 per game basketball player. And he then went on to play for Michigan State from 1962 to 1964. And he led the team in scoring for 3 consecutive seasons. He averaged 21 points per game as a senior and scored over 1,000 points in his career. He was at 1,146 points in his career. So really, really good basketball player. Never played a single down of college football. But the Dallas Cowboys were really impressed by his athleticism, and they offered him a contract. And they paid him $500 to attend the workout and ultimately offered him that contract. So he made the team as a wide receiver. He passed up the opportunity to play basketball for the Baltimore Bullets. He was actually drafted in the 14th round of the 1964 draft by the Baltimore Bullets. Now, you may say 14th round, Jamie, doesn't the NBA only have 2 rounds of their draft now? Yeah, now they do. Back in 1964, they had many more rounds. Again, he was drafted in the 14th round by the Baltimore Bullets. So if you look at his statistics, in 1964, he played in 7 games, but did not have a single statistic. There was nothing on his statistic line. 1965, his second year in the league, he played in 10 games. He started 7 of them. Caught 16 passes for 233 yards, 2 touchdowns. 1960, that was 1965. 1966, he played in 14 games, 10 games started, caught 27 passes for 474 yards with a touchdown. That was his best season. 1967 for the Cowboys, 7 games, 1 game started. He only caught 9 passes for 88 yards. And then his final year, 1968, again for Dallas, he played in 10 games, didn't start any of them, but caught 16 passes for 194 yards and 0 touchdowns. So, interesting career, not a Hall of Fame career by any means, but, had a chance to play in the NFL. And so Peter was the author of a book that was the basis for this movie. And, again, giving you some context with him playing for Dallas, him playing in the 60s, and him writing about what it was like in the 60s. He wrote about it and talked about the NFL and what it was back then, okay? And look, make no mistake, in North Dallas 40, The team that Nick Nolte is playing on is called the North Dallas Bulls. Make no mistake, that is a representation of the Dallas Cowboys in everything but name. So everything that you see in this movie was a representation of Peter Gent or Peter Gent's time with the Dallas Cowboys, including the coach, and we'll get into that in a little bit, the system, the discipline, and even the cold professionalism. So truth be told, the NFL was absolutely furious when this film came out. Teams tried to distance themselves from it, and the league absolutely wanted it buried, which tells you something important. This movie wasn't dangerous because it exaggerated the truth. It was dangerous because it told the truth, and it told it too early. So again, at this point in football history, players didn't talk like this. They didn't complain publicly. They didn't question painkillers. They didn't question authority. Players at this time, they swallowed pills, they taped joints, they played. And North Dallas 40 broke that silence in the late 1970s. What the movie shows us is the reality of the time, and that is at that time that locker rooms aren't sacred. Doctors don't heal, they manage inventory. And the movie picks up on this term a little bit, inventory. The players aren't human, they are inventory. Coaches don't hate players, they simply replace them. They're, again, a product to be replaced. This is football before the apology tours came out, and in some ways are still happening today. It's before the settlements. It's before the press conferences. This is the truth, and it is very, very unfiltered. So let's talk a little bit about Phil Elliott then. Again, Nick Nolte plays Phil Elliott, the wide receiver, and he is not, again, the hero in this movie. He's not chasing greatness. He's not trying to prove anything. He's trying to survive in the NFL. And again, from the very beginning of the movie, his body's failing him. I talked about that first scene, but again, it's just stuck in my head because I think I started this movie so many times over the last, I don't know, call it 40 years. And I was always watching that first scene. And it's when he wakes up with a bloody nose, surrounded by beer bottles, very sore, pops pills, smokes a joint. He hurts, and he hurts bad. His knees hurt, his hands ache. His mornings are very stiff and slow. You know, every solution that he partakes in is a chemical solution, whether that's beer, pills, pot, whatever, shots, injections, whatever it might be. There's a moment in the movie where Phil asks what he's being given, and the answer is basically, don't worry about it. So, you know, in playing football, Phil's like, look, what am I being given to do this? And he wants that purpose. He wants that reason. And the only answer he gets is, don't worry about it. And that line is really the entire movie when you think about it. It's, don't worry about it. Don't worry about your body. Don't worry about your future. Don't worry about tomorrow. Just play. Football here isn't violent in the cinematic sense. It's violent in the routine sense. Pain isn't dramatic. It's administrative. And Phil understands the unspoken rule. That is, if you can play hurt, you're valuable. If you can't, you're already gone. And there's a line Phil delivers that cuts straight through the mythology. He says, I play hurt, I play scared, and I play tired. And that is just, it's not toughness. That's a confession. And the movie quietly throughout it asks a question that feels almost, I'll say, theological. What happens when your body is treated as disposable? You know, there's no rest here. There's no Sabbath. There's no recovery. It's only about output. And once your output declines, your identity collapses with it. And that's I say the beauty of this movie, but it's also the enchanting factor of this movie. It's a very enchanting, very dark movie. And I think in the 70s when this came out, and in the 80s, and I remember my dad like laughing about it. It was like, oh, this is so funny. This is great. Look at these guys. Like, this is crazy and stuff. The craziest part is that this was real. There are scenes in the movie that feel really far-fetched, but I don't think they were far-fetched. I think this was the reality of professional football in the 70s. There's the party scene at the beginning of the movie after while he's in the bathtub, he gets interrupted by other players that say, let's go hunting. And they go out in a car, shoot guns, kind of a crazy scene. But then it leads to a party scene. And it's the football team, and there's girls around. There's drugs, there's drinks, there's women, there's sexual harassment. Guys like Joe Bob, who is an unbelievably crazy character in this movie, but probably somebody that is based on a real figure. He is absolutely out of control. He picks up this girl that we come to know as Charlotte, and she says, let me down, and he just won't let go of her. And when Phil speaks up about Joe Bob and says, Joe Bob, you got to let her down, Phil's told to cool it. Essentially, it's, hey, no, let Joe Bob do whatever he wants. We need to feed him with the women and the drugs and the alcohol. So that's a very meaningful scene in this movie. There's the meeting with ownership that comes shortly thereafter, and this is where this family talk resonates. It's, hey, Phil, be family with us. We want you to be part of the family. We want you to be with us. And it's just a falsity. It's not about family. It's about production. It's about go out there and help us win. And if you can't, then you're gone. There's this scene where Phil is having sexual relations with a woman named Joanne, who is marrying one of the family members, Emmett Hunter. And again, you think of the football player having relations with a woman who is marrying an owner. It's pretty crazy. But again, this is stuff that happened back in the day. There is a remarkable scene in the movie, the locker room scene, where it's just Phil and Seth. Seth is the quarterback of the team. And they come in and they open the medicine cabinet. It's not a medicine cabinet, but it's a pill area, and they just are popping pills left and right. And then they open the fridge and take out beer and start drinking the beer. And it's remarkable. I mean, it is insane. This is why there were lawsuits in the NFL. This is why players that played back then said, you really effed me up and you should have known better. And that's true. The NFL probably should have known better. There's a very kind of touching scene, sad scene, and it's between Phil and Seth, the quarterback. And I think Seth asks Phil about this Charlotte girl, the one that Joe Bob had picked up earlier, but now Phil has a relationship with her, and kind of talks about her a little bit. And Seth just has this line, and it just kind of looks down, looks sad, and he just says, I'll never love it. I'll never love nobody, is exactly what he said. And it's just, I think these players had football running through their veins, and that's all they did. That's all they knew. And I think Seth saying, I'll never love nobody is really his admission of, because I don't know how to do anything else. And it's kind of a sad, sad scene. So that was a little bit about, our I don't even want to say our hero of the story, but Nick Nolte in the story. Let me talk about the coach. And the coach is B.A. Struther. And he is one of the most unsettling figures maybe in sports cinema. And it's not because he's cruel. It's not because he's mean. He's pretty calm, actually, throughout the movie. He doesn't yell much. He doesn't demean players openly. He doesn't seem angry. He is efficient. And listen to the movie. And it's funny because this is the 70s and we're here in 2026 talking about AI and how data can be used to make decisions and so forth. Look, the coach, and I'll just call him Coach Struther, he is all about efficiency, all about metrics, all about computers. This is what the computer spits out. So this is what we expect you to do. He speaks softly. He watches closely. You just see him watching the whole movie. He makes decisions without emotion. It's not that he has this personal evil side to him. I'll call it, it's not personal evil. It's more institutional sin, I'll call it. Nobody in the organization wakes up wanting to destroy Phil Elliott or any other of the players for that matter. But the coaches, they wake up wanting to win. And that's the danger. When winning becomes the highest good, everything else becomes negotiable. And that includes health, that includes an individual's dignity, that includes truth. And, there's another scene in the movie where they're practicing before the big game that's near the end of the movie. And they're encouraging the players to really go at each other, and it creates a fight within the practice. And the coaches are the ones that absolutely brought it on. And it was in an attempt to get the players amped up. And you see the assistant coach kind of smiling, you see Struthers smiling, and they're going at it, and they're trying to hurt each other. And it's like, yeah, this is what we want to do. We almost want to treat it like it's a dog fight. And again, that was the reality of football back then. The Coach Struther doesn't lie to Phil. He just never really tells him the whole truth. And silence does a lot of damage there. So I mentioned the locker room scene and between Phil and Seth when they were in the locker room together, popping pills, drinking beers, and so forth. But let me just talk. There's several locker room scenes in the movie with the whole team. And it's like, the locker room scenes, you can see this brotherhood, but it's like a brotherhood with an expiration date on it. One of the most honest things that North Dallas 40 shows us is how players cope with the knowledge that they won't last. They joke around, again, they drink, they chase women, codeine, beer, B12 shots, other pills, medicine cabinets full of pills. They numb themselves and pretend not to think about tomorrow because tomorrow is terrifying. What happens tomorrow? What happens when I can't do it anymore? It's brotherhood, but it's brotherhood built on denial. And every player knows that the same system that's keeping them employed today is already preparing for their replacement. And nobody wants to be the guy that admits he's afraid, but you can see it in them. So they have to cover it though. And they laugh louder, they drink harder, they ignore the pain longer. And, this isn't immaturity. I think if you watch the film back in the 70s or early 80s, I go back to my dad laughing about it. It's like, I think he just thought it was a funny movie. It was like an Animal House or something. Hey, this is just a comedy. I think the feeling in the movie was it was immaturity and something to laugh about. But the reality is this is based on a true story, and it's not immaturity. It's about survival. I want to turn now to this Charlotte character who, again, was introduced early in the movie and becomes Phil's love interest. But it's very interesting because while she's a love interest, it's almost like she's represents a life that Phil can't enter. So Phil's relationship with Charlotte, it's not the love story based on the traditional sense. She represents something that's more dangerous to Phil, and that is an exit from football, an exit from the only thing he really knows. Charlotte offers Phil a world where football doesn't define him. It's a world with conversation, stillness, meaning, and Phil doesn't know how to live there. Football shaped him too completely. He doesn't know who he is without the pain and without schedules, without someone telling him he's useful. And honestly, this is really tragic, very tragic. I talked about this being an enchanting movie. Maybe that's not even doing it justice. Maybe tragic is the right word. Football didn't just damage Phil's body, it damaged his imagination. Charlotte tells Phil to stop dreaming about a ranch. Like he takes her to this property that he has, and with the thought that someday he's going to build a ranch. And, she tells Phil, stop dreaming about a ranch and just build one and live here and live with me. And he honestly doesn't know how to do it. He can't envision a life beyond the game because the game never allowed him to practice that skill. And it is really sad. I don't want to belabor this too much, but I do want to talk a little more in depth about the medical system, which is, again, care without healing. Doctors in the film, they're not monsters. They are, I'll call them technicians. They don't ask, should you play? They don't look out for the player. They ask, can you play? Can you physically play? Not should you play, can you play? And that distinction matters. Pain's treated as an obstacle. It's not a warning. There's no long-term thinking. There's no future planning. It's literally just maintenance. And again, this goes back to them being inventory. And it shows us something chilling. Medicine is serving performance instead of health. Nobody even thinks a second about it. They just are simply doing their jobs. And it's inside a system that rewards silence and speed. And it is, again, it's really chilling. You compare it to today when players, look at the NBA and players take rest. It's a grueling season. Players rest during the season. Players tweak a hamstring and they take time off. Today is completely different than what football was in the 70s. And I think that's for the betterment of the individual. So let's talk about the end of the movie now, because it's sad. I mean, it starts with this big final game where they can get into the playoffs. It's a big game. And by the way, this isn't a movie about action. There's not a lot of action in this movie. It's not like, I'll say, again, I always compare it to Hoosiers where they're showing what happens during the games. It's not a lot of that. But the ending is sad because the coaches tell Phil that he's going to be starting. And Phil gets really excited about that. That's a badge of courage to him. But he does have this knee injury. And he says, don't worry about it. I'll be fine. And the coaches tell him to get a shot in his knee. And the reason he's playing is because there's a player named Delma who's a receiver who is really hurt and doesn't feel like he can play through the injury. So Phil's going to have to play for him. So they tell Phil he's starting, but they say, go shoot up, let the doctor shoot up your knee before the game. And so Phil goes to shoot up his knee, and they have Delma sitting there right beside him while Phil's getting his knee shot up. And they shoot up Phil's knee, and it is not pleasant. It's like a horse needle. It does not look pleasant at all. And what you realize is they're giving Phil this shot in front of Delma so they can say to Delma, look, that's all you need to do, and then you can start. And they push Delma into getting a shot, even though he is absolutely terrified of it. So what happens? Phil gets his shot, walks out of the room. They pressure Delma, and Delma caves. He gets the shot, and he starts over Phil. And all of this about telling Phil he was going to start, it was all a ploy to get a shot in front of Delma and ultimately convince Delma that he can get that shot too. And if he does, he will indeed start. There's no miracle at the end of North Dallas 40. There's no championship montage. There's no last second touchdown. There's no speech reminding us it was all worth it. Again, at the beginning of the movie, the owner, Conrad Hunter, says, there's always a place in the family for the right kind of man. But at the end, Phil Elliott is confronted with the drug use, the marijuana, the mingling with women. They bring him in and hold him accountable to all of that. Everything that they let happen as owners is now thrown in his face as a violation of the morals clause in his contract. And he is essentially released. It's quiet, it's efficient, it's without ceremony, and it's a perfect fit into this movie. It's the whole point of the movie. Football doesn't need to hate you to move on from you. It just needs someone younger, someone healthier. The most devastating part of the ending, I think, is not that Phil loses football. It's that football never really acknowledged him in the first place. He gave it his body, his pain, his youth, and what does it give back to him? Absolutely nothing. So, again, I did Rudy in a rewind sessions last week. And I think it's interesting. If you look at Rudy is about faith and faith being a possibility. North Dallas 40 is more about faith being misplaced. So Rudy asks us to believe in the system and that it will reward perseverance. North Dallas 40 asks, what happens when the system never intended to do that? Both movies are honest. They're just honest about different layers of the truth. One is absolutely aspirational, the other is an aftermath. You need both to really understand football completely. So, why does this movie matter now? Again, this was 1979. It came out. What are we, 46 years, 47 years away from that time? Um, Everything that North Dallas 40 warned us about eventually came true. The concussions. I mean, my goodness, if you watch some of the NFL films, clips of actual NFL games from the 70s and see some of the hits these players took, and they have the absolute you can tell they're concussed. Like their arms go up like a concussed player does, and they're walked off the field stumbling. And you know what? They come back in 2 plays later. North Dallas 40 warned us about early retirements, mental health struggles, players speaking out. The league eventually changed, but it didn't change because it wanted to. It changed because it had to. I mean, this movie stands as a rare piece of art that told the truth before the truth was safe. And that's why it still matters today. I think this painted a picture of a comedy and a funny movie that soon the sports world realized was actually real. And it led to some of the changes that happened in the 80s, these 2000s, and kind of where we are today. So North Dallas 40 doesn't hate football. It loves football enough to tell the truth about it. It reminds us that the game gives meaning, but it also takes bodies. It gives brotherhood, but it also takes futures. And the most honest thing it ever says is this: football will never love you back the way you love it. And knowing that, really knowing that, might be the most important lesson the game ever teaches. So let me talk about the movie itself and just kind of the noise surrounding the movie. Not noise, but just information about the movie. So from an award standpoint, the National Board of Review in the United States, this was recognized as a top 10 films of 1979. The National Society of Film Critic Awards, again in the United States, Nick Nolte finished in 3rd place for Best Actor. And then the New York Film Critics Circle Award, Nick Nolte was nominated for Best Actor. So some accolades to Nick Nolte, some accolades for the movie. Again, we talked about the writer. The director of the film was William Kocheff. And it's interesting, William Kocheff. So he directed North Dallas 40. He also directed Weekend at Bernie's and also First Blood, which was the Rambo movie. So I thought that was interesting. So many, a lot of different genres of films with him. What was the reception of the movie? Well, overall, it was very positive. It was seen as one of William Kocheff's best films. I'm going to read a couple quotes here. So Newsweek magazine's David Anson wrote that the writers Kocheff, Gent, and producer Frank Yablans are nonetheless to be congratulated for allowing their story to live through its characters, abjuring Rocky-like fantasy configurations for the harder realities of the game. North Dallas 40 isn't subtle or finely tuned, but like a crunching downfield tackle, it leaves its marks. And then Sports Illustrated magazine's Frank DeFord, and Frank DeFord is an unbelievable historic writer about sports. He wrote, "If North Dallas 40 is reasonably accurate, the pro game is a gruesome human abattoir, worse even than previously imagined." A little foreshadowing there, right? Much of the strength of this impression can be attributed to Nick Nolte. Unfortunately, Nolte's character, Phil Elliott, is often fuzzily drawn, which makes the actor's accomplishment all the more impressive. Rotten Tomatoes, as of today, this film has an 85% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, it is a film that has lasted for decades and is still 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you look at the cast, again, Nick Nolte, the best known member of the cast. Nick Nolte, a prodigious career. When I think of Nick Nolte, I think of 48 Hours, Cape Fear, Prince of Tides, just a great actor. Bo Svensson played Joe Bob Pretty, and I thought this was interesting. He was also the Reverend. His name was Reverend Harmony in Kill Bill Volume 2. I remember the scene. I don't remember him specifically in that movie, but I know the scene that he was in. So I always think that's interesting. Steve Forrest played Conrad Hunter, the owner. And if you've ever seen the movie Mommy Dearest, Stephen Forrest was one of the love interests of Joan Crawford in Mommy Dearest. So I find that interesting. Dabney Coleman was in this movie. Dabney Coleman, again, part of the ownership family. He was Emmett Hunter. Everybody knows Dabney Coleman. I mean, whether it's 9 to 5, War Games, Tootsie, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Dabney Coleman, an unbelievable actor. And then G.D. Spradlin. It's funny. So G.D. Spradlin played Coach Struther. And I recognized the character. I couldn't put my hand on who it was, and then it hit me. G.D. Spradlin in The Godfather 2 played Senator Geary. And you can hear kind of the voice. He kind of talks like this, and you can absolutely pick it up. So yeah, interesting. So I always, again, like to look at those movies. Who was in the movie? Did they play a role in a movie that I didn't realize or didn't recognize? So love doing that. Just doing my research for this film, there was a goof. I'm sure there were many goofs, but one that I picked up on when Phil is walking into Conrad Hunter's office building, which is supposedly in Dallas. The team is Dallas based. You can see the Westin Bonaventure Hotel plainly visible. It's a hotel in Los Angeles. You can recognize it because it's an iconic building of 5 glass cylindrical towers. So kind of funny. It's supposed to be in Dallas, but clearly it's in LA, which is where they filmed. This movie was released August 3rd of 1979. My anniversary is August 4th, but it wasn't 1979. It was a little later than that. It runs 1 hour and 59 minutes. This is interesting. Within 30 days, either 15 days before or 15 days after the release of North Dallas 40, here are some of the other movies that came out. The original Star Wars came out July 21st, 1979. More American Graffiti, kind of the follow-up to American Graffiti, came out August 3rd, 1979. The Amityville Horror came out August 3rd, 1979, and Apocalypse Now came out August 15th, 1979. So there's some pretty good movies that was going up against within that kind of 30-day window. Total gross worldwide to date, 26 million, just over $26 million is what the film grossed. In 1979 alone, it grossed $19 million. That placed it 38th highest grossing film of 1979. If you're interested, I'll just give you this information. Again, finished 38th. It grossed $19 million. What were the top 5 films in 1979? Well, I'll start with number 5, Apocalypse Now. So if North Dallas 40 grossed 19 million, well, Apocalypse Now in 1979 grossed close to 79 million. Number 4 was Star Trek, the motion picture, the original Star Trek movie. That grossed $82.3 million. Again, this was 1979. Those are really good numbers. The third highest grossing movie in 1979 was Rocky II at $85.2 million. The second highest grossing movie in 1979 was The Amityville Horror. That grossed $86.5 million. A story about the Amityville Horror, no lie. I was laying upstairs as a kid, and I was in my parents' bed for some reason, and I think it was because they had a TV, and I had the TV on, and they were downstairs, and a preview for the Amityville Horror came on the television, and I just remember the words. It said something like, "Beware of the eyes in the window." And it kind of showed these eyes in the window. And I freaked out and ran downstairs, bawling my eyes out. Just that movie scared me beyond belief. So that was the second, didn't scare some people. It was the second highest grossing film of 1979. Number 1, 1979 movie, highest grossing. The original Superman, Christopher Reeve, $3.3 million. So that is North Dallas 40. I like watching these movies. I like doing research. I learn a ton, a lot deeper than I would have ever known if I just watched the movie and didn't really think about it. So I'm really thankful for that. Again, we are almost 2 weeks from the Super Bowl and want to do these rewind sessions often, but this time of the year, it's just appropriate that I focus on football. So hopefully you enjoyed it and learned something from North Dallas 40. That's a wrap for the rewind sessions. Thanks for watching it, listening to it. Really appreciate everybody that takes the time to listen to these. I put a lot of effort into it, but I'm not saying that is a reason why you should watch it or listen to it. I love doing it. I love learning about this stuff, but I do think you might learn something from it and it might change your mind on how you view a movie. Hopefully you take the time to listen to it. Again, follow my social media channels, X and Instagram at Tell Us Ellis HQ, YouTube at Tell Us Ellis Media. Subscribe, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, or any podcasting platform. Subscribe. It's simple. Then when you're driving to work, it just pops up and you can just listen to it. And listen to it on 1.5 times speed. That's the one thing I learned over the last couple of years. I have so many podcasts I listen to. I would never get through them all. So I put them on 1.5 speed. I think my voice sounds better on 1.5 speed. So try it. Check it out. If you have any questions, comments, just want to vent, disagree with me, agree with me, whatever, send me an email, jamie@tellusellis.com. Again, thanks for watching or listening, and I will see you next time.